Dozens of people are dead and more than 100 injured this morning after a massive fire tore through a New Year's Eve celebration at a luxury ski resort town in Switzerland. Officials say the fire began yesterday at a bar in the Swiss Alps town of Crans-Montana. As of this morning, 40 people have been confirmed dead and 115 more are injured. The head of a hospital where nearly 24 burn victims were taken said most of them were between the ages of 16 and 26 years old. Take a look at this video from a witness taken of the fire. You can see people running and hear yelling and calls for help. Some footage suggests some of the exits might have been blocked. Authorities say it is still too early to comment on the exact cause of the blaze or potential security flaws at the venue. They have ruled out terrorism and are focused on identifying the victims, but it's just an unspeakable tragedy there in Switzerland. Let's now bring in Sky News correspondent Rob Harris, who joins us live from Crans-Montana, Switzerland, not far from the fire scene. Rob, thank you for joining us. What's the latest you're hearing from authorities this morning and seeing there on the ground?
Well, here behind me, so many people are mourning the victims. We're seeing flowers being laid, soft toys also being brought here. The locals in Crans-Montana trying to comprehend this tragedy, one of the darkest days ever for Switzerland. And behind me there is the bar, the Constellation Bar, where we've seen forensic investigators arriving this morning. The front of the bar is covered by tents. The scene behind there, one of utter horror. The devastation that unfolded around 1:30 in the morning on New Year's Day is something they're trying to discover about why it unfolded. What sparked the inferno that has changed so many lives, that has killed more than 40 people. There's a lot of focus on the bottles of champagne and the sparklers on them and whether they set the wooden ceiling alight. And then many asking about the exit routes from the bar, potential crowd surge through potentially one exit. And in the hospitals in the area around Crans-Montana, there are dozens of victims there having their burns injuries being treated, and the task of identifying the victims is proving very difficult. Authorities warning it could take days, even weeks, for some of those victims to be identified as families come into this country, particularly from Italy. Many Italians believed to be in that bar on New Year's Eve. Also, the French authorities saying there are French nationals who have been caught up in this tragedy as well. And locals telling us that psychologists are now seeing some of those who witness the scenes of horror as they try to comprehend with the devastation and the horrific scenes that unfolded here.
Sky News correspondent Rob Harris reporting live for us from Switzerland. Rob, thank you. And of course, we will bring you any updates to this story as the morning continues. Truly a tragedy there. Staying overseas, widening demonstrations over Iran's ailing economy have spread to the country's rural provinces, with reports of at least 7 people being killed as security forces clashed with protesters. According to the Associated Press, the fatalities occurred in 4 cities and may mark the start of a heavier-handed response by Iran's theocracy over the demonstrations. MS NOW has not yet been able to independently verify these deaths. The protests broke out across Tehran and other cities earlier this week over a number of financial issues, including high inflation and the collapse of the country's currency. Now, Iran's semi-official news agency reported that a number of individuals had been arrested for disrupting public order. Meanwhile, in a 3 a.m. post on social media this morning, President Trump wrote in part this: "If Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go." Richard, again, that's the president we were speaking earlier about his schedule and up in the middle of the night. This is 3 in the morning. He's at Palm Beach. That's remarkable words there from the President of the United States. I know have alarmed you. So walk us through what they may yield.
What's going on in Iran is quite significant. It's not the first time we've seen things like this, but it's on a larger scale. The economy is doing terribly. The currency is basically wallpaper. There are significant protests. But to say we will come to people's aid dangers. One, is this going to encourage people to come out and protest? And if so, they're likely to get slaughtered. One comes to mind to me, Jonathan, is Hungary, 1956. We've seen these things. The idea that we're going to use military force, well, how? What would you do to use military force to protect millions of people if they're out in the streets? This is just empty, dangerous rhetoric. The president should put away his phone. This is not the way you make foreign policy. But there are serious things, though, he could say. What about the United States saying publicly to Iran, we are prepared to have a normal relationship with you if, and lay out the conditions, you stop using your money to support terrorism or groups like Hamas or Hezbollah. We're prepared to relax sanctions if you start treating your people better. And what this gets at is the Achilles heel of the regime. This is a regime that has mismanaged the country's economy. We ought to focus on that. Focus on their economic mismanagement, how we could help the people of Iran economically if only this regime would put the Iranian people first. That's a kind of statement we could put in the political mix in Iran, and that might get the regime, put pressure on them to reform, help the people, be helpful to the people in Iran. But to promise American military intervention, I think, is going to get a lot of people killed. And again, if I were the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and I heard this, I wouldn't know what in the world to do. There's no way to translate that kind of a post, which is really just words and empty threats with serious policy. So this is, we talked about it before. You actually need a National Security Council sometimes. You actually need a serious process where the intelligence would weigh in, you'd look at your options, someone would remind the president of history here, what we've learned in other situations when we saw violent protests in countries like in Eastern Europe in the 50s or 60s, and what have we learned is smart and what have we learned is really dangerous to do.
Gene, I read that and it reminded me a little bit of George W. Bush's second inaugural address, where he says, we're going to promote democracy around the world, and if you are a protester in a country that is tyrannical, don't worry, the United States is with you. But you knew that George W. Bush had 4 years of experience in this field. He really believed this. He had a National Security Council. It sent alarm bells right around the world, that inaugural address, but it came with some kind of background to it. This just felt like the president, I mean, as Richard said, this is just words. This felt like the president sending off words. America is locked and loaded for the people of Iran. What does it even mean?
What does that mean? I mean, there's not going to be a U.S. invasion of Iran for regime change, right? I mean, that's talk about a major undertaking. That's not going to happen. And look at Donald Trump's record of being perfectly happy to deal with repressive authoritarian regimes if he feels it's in the U.S. interest and perhaps in his friend's financial interest. But it is an interesting moment in Iran. And I'm wondering just how interesting. Richard Haass, what is your sense of whether this is an actual threat to the Iranian regime, an internal threat, set aside what Trump might or might not have said. Is the regime in any sort of danger from this?
I wouldn't exaggerate it. I hope so, but I wouldn't exaggerate it. You don't have an organized opposition. What you have is massive protests in lots of places. It's not an organized alternative. The regime also, as you know, has the means and the will to push back. They've got guys with guns and sticks who'll come out and treat people terribly. So I think it's too soon to say Iran is on the edge, but I still think this is an opportunity, if not for regime change, for some significant policy change, both externally and internally in Iran.
And President Trump has pointed to the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities over the summer as a real triumph, and certainly he's engaging in bellicose rhetoric here, setting off alarm bells throughout the region. We will have definitely more on this story.